So when it comes to clothing and the background of clothing, whether it's like, you know, garment construction and pattern making and that sort of thing, I think that it's important to have some sort of knowledge of it. I think you need to understand certain things, and that's how my job has prepared me for a lot of the things that I deal with my clothing line. I do fits like for retail chains. I look at a garment on a dummy and I must look at it and I'm like, well, I'm not happy with this, it doesn't sit right, that's not right, this is not right, that needs to be fixed, this needs to be pulled up here. That's my job, that's what I do. I sit with the quality ladies and we look at things. I sit with the pattern maker and we look at a garment and we say, you know what, this is what needs to be changed. That's a part of what I do on the daily. So when it comes to my own clothing line, I don't treat it any different. I actually fit every single garment on myself as well. So we make everything in a size small because I'm a size small, and then I generally take the stuff home with me, or I'll walk around the office with it, and I just carry on about my day. And I like to feel the way it fits, you know. I want to feel how the rise fits, you know, in the crotch area. I want to see how the in leg is it too tight on the knee when you're sitting and when you're bending and that sort of thing. And those things are important to me because I want the end customer to actually want to wear what they have, you know. If you don't have a background in clothing and you don't really understand that sort of thing, I suggest you have people around you who understand those things. I used to know how to do patterns. I haven't made a pattern in years. Susan makes patterns and she does all the patterns for me. So, you know, I'll give her a spec and say, this is what I want. It's got a sketch or a picture of what I'm looking for and measurements and all of that, details, fabrications, all of that. And that goes to her and she makes up a pattern. From there it goes to the sample room, they cut it, they machine it, and all of those processes that happen. So the first time I see this garment, it's gone through like a whole lot of people and it's come to me for fit, and I look at it and I, you know, make my critique on it. Our in-house QA will measure the garment according to the spec and see what the measurements are, and often I'll make adjustments based on those measurements, and I'll, like, you know, add a little bit here, take off a little bit there, that sort of thing. But that's a part of what I do on the daily, as I said. So I do have experience in that. One of the things, you know, I feel like if you're doing it on a really small scale, I think that you could hire a seamstress to help you. You know, you don't have to do things the way I'm doing it. I sometimes feel like the way we do things, where we've got so many processes and procedures in place, that sometimes it's a bit tedious and it draws the process out a bit longer when you go through all these pre-production phases to make sure that you're ready for production. So, you know, I mean, there's also people that you could hire to do patterns. There's people who do things like that where they work freelance. I don't work with anyone like that. I work with our own staff who, you know, make patterns and all of that for me. So I don't need to worry about hiring a freelance person, but I am aware that there are people out there who are capable of doing patterns and who you can hire to do patterns for you. Another thing that you must also understand is that after you approve your sample, let's say, and you're happy with it, there's also that grading process, which also falls into the whole pattern making area. And that whole thing is very complicated, because with grading, you're basically taking your sample size and you're grading it down your smaller sizes, and you're also grading it up to your multiple bigger sizes. So for example, in most cases, your chest would grade down by -2.5 and grade up by 3 cm, and that's on the half, or on the full it would be 5 and 6 kind of thing. You get me? Or 5 and 5. It just depends on what your size curve is, whether it's numeric or alpha. In my case, because we work on an alpha size curve, I go down 2.5 and I go up by 3 cm. Not only have you got to grade all these different points, like you've got to grade straps, you've got to grade this point to that point and this point to that point, and every single point needs to move out and move in, and it's very complex. And you've also got to make sure that the garment stays proportionate over the sizes, and that's where grading is really important. And we've got a grading team that does that on like a lecture system and, you know, all of that, and they plot markers out and whatnot. And I don't fully understand grading because, you know, I haven't really used my skills since I graduated from college. So you know, it's something that I have I have a bit of knowledge on, but it's not something like I'm an expert in, you know. And there's all these little things, but as I said, you can hire people to do these for you. There are services that you can hire to actually sort out that thing. So I'm not saying you have to understand pattern making and you have to understand grading, but at the same time you also need to have some sort of knowledge of what needs to be done. Like if you didn't know that you needed to grade a pattern, should you really even be wanting to start a clothing line? Maybe you should be going back and thinking things through properly. You know what I mean? It's a bit scary if you want to start a clothing line, you don't even know that you needed to grade oversizes, you know what I'm saying? When it comes to like making samples and all of that, you can maybe get a seamstress to help you. Seamstresses are pretty good. They can also make patterns most of the time. I don't necessarily think they're the best pattern makers, although some can be, but you know, I always say go to an expert to do that job, go to an expert to do that job, and go to an expert in that field, you know. I don't know, my personal opinion is that a jack of all trades, master of none, you know. Some of them can actually do patterns as well. I'm not sure about grading, and you'd obviously have to put your feelers out there and try and understand who to get in contact with and that sort of thing on the pre-production side. Now with us, before we go into production, we like go through other processes even before then, and that's why I said sometimes it can be a bit tedious, but because the big company is geared up for chain store work, that's what we do, that's our business. We do retail, you know, we're doing like the big chains, and you've got to do a whole lot of balances and checks before you go into production. I'm going to move into fabrics next, because I feel like fabrics kind of happen while the whole pre-production kind of thing is happening, of course. Now personally, I import my fabric from China. I go to China, I sit with the fabric suppliers as a part of my job, and I'm always like seeing new developments, and this is new and that's new. Although there's a couple of fabric bases that I run on the regular, those are like my signatures. I have a set weight that I do, and I just do different colors and that sort of thing, but those are like that's my basic in my range, you know. But it's always interesting to find like new developments and that sort of thing, and just be exposed to that. So again, as I said, you know, because I've got the big company behind me, I can also negotiate really good prices because of that. And so when I'm sitting with these suppliers, you know, we're negotiating good prices and that sort of thing. Sometimes my minimums are a problem, but you know, here and there I'll pay the extra just because I don't want too much of the fabric, and I just want like a smaller bit. And by smaller bit, I mean 800 meters. That's a lot. But most of the time I like order about 1,000 meters of stuff, and you gotta kind of use it up. Like if you've ever looked at my range and you've seen more like a fabric used in more than one place, that's because I have that much fabric, and in order to use it all, I've got to use from multiple items in the range. So this is an example of like one of my fabric orders here. I give the fabric supplier some swatches, and they lab dipped it for me. So this is what the lab dip looks like, and they give you options in, so they'll give you options in basically like an A, B, and C, and it's all in the same shade but slightly different tones in that. So even though it almost looks identical, it's not necessarily identical, you know. And so here I've gone like on my chocolates, I've gone with A, I've gone with A, I've gone with A, and I've gone like 800 meters, 1,000 meters, 1,000 meters, and then I think I did 800 meters here. And this is basically like my summer range. This is the fabrics. And if I tell you when the order was placed, on the 11th of April, so we are in the end of August at the moment. So I already placed my fabric order in April, and it was based off these colors, and I said, well, Brett wants, you know, A, B, C kind of thing. Anyway, so after the fabric order is placed, obviously, you know, get into that whole thing, and then start producing it. Now that I've like said that's my lab dip that I want to approve, when the fabric is ready and before they're about to ship, they send you a hanger and 5 meter lengths, which is always so handy. So they'll give me like 5 meters of each of the shades of fabric that I ordered, and it comes like this together. And this is basically just my hanger to say what they've sent, and then I get like 5 meter bundles, and often use that for like sampling and stuff. Now because this is like a set fabric that I run, I always have sampling in stock because it's a set fabric. I use the same 270 gram nylon ponte like throughout the year. I always keep black. Black is like my basic kind of thing. Like I've just started kind of venturing into color a little bit. But you know, we'll make our samples, and while all of that's happening, so by the time these bulk samplings of 5 meters arrive from China and from your supplier, you're basically ready to go into production at that point. So you start making all your final pre-production samples of, like, we call it first of styles, where it's a smaller size and the biggest size that you do made up absolutely correctly as supposed to be like what your production is going to be. Anyway, so you know, with fabrics it's really interesting. I actually did a little calculation with fabrics. Okay, when it comes to ordering fabrics, like, and importing them, you've got to think of duties and, you know, freight charges and all of that. It's very important to take into consideration. Now, if you're not buying 1,000 meters of a fabric, you don't need to worry about this, because you're probably going to be buying it from like a local wholesaler or from a fabric shop, depending on what level you are going with this whole clothing line. I buy directly from the mills. You can negotiate a much better price. For example, even with a 22% fabric duty, let's say on a fabric that costs me 20 rand a meter, basically if you go buy it from a wholesaler where you have to go buy like a roll of fabric, so you go buy your 1 roll of fabric and you're probably going to pay like 30 bucks for that fabric. And if you buy it from a fabric shop where you're going to buy 1 meter or 2 meters, you're probably going to be paying 36 to 40 rand a meter, whereas I've paid 20 rand a meter, including my shipping, including my duties and all of those things, because I was able to import it myself, because I was able to negotiate a good price on the fabric. So it just depends on what level you are doing it at. So, you know, you need to kind of like just figure that out. One of the things someone asked me was, what about buying like from people who are just selling kind of fabric kind of thing, like, you know, in the markets and things? I don't ever buy from markets. So what I do gather about the fabric markets in Guangzhou and Shaoxing and those sort of things, you're gonna buy a meter or two, cool, you know, sampling kind of thing, like that's chill. We've even bought like prints and stuff for sampling, just to use at a later stage because it's a really cool print. But when you're buying, like, let's say you want to buy 50 meters or 100 meters of something, a lot of the time the attitude is kind of like, well, take it or leave it. And you know, if it's crap and the fabric is like got rejects and stuff, you're gonna be stuck with it. And that's the kind of vibe that I get from that market buying aspect of fabric buying. But I mean, if you can't buy 1,000 meter minimums and you do want something a bit more specialized, obviously you're not going to be able to choose your own colors and all that, because you're just going to have to choose from what they have. So maybe that is an option for people who can afford to like go to Shaoxing or somewhere and go to these fabric markets and actually buy fabrics there and meet suppliers there to buy smaller bundles of fabric. So I would never want to not encourage people to do this whole thing. I just feel like there's a lot of complexities to it, and there's a lot of things that people might not understand. As I said, it also depends on the level that you're doing it at. 10 units versus 300 units or 500 units or 1,000 units is very different, and you need to kind of just decide where you position yourself, and from there, that's where you're going to figure out the next steps, pattern making, and you know, who's going to produce my bulk and who's going to do all these different things for me. Fabric, do you need to buy 1,000 meters? If you don't need to buy 1,000 meters, why would you buy 1,000 meters? Go to a fabric wholesaler. There's so many fabric wholesalers everywhere in Johannesburg. There's fabric wholesalers all over the country where you'd be able to go buy 1 roll. If you can't buy 1 roll, if you don't need to buy 1 roll and you just need 1 meter of fabric or 2 meters of fabric, go to a fabric shop. There are so many fabric shops everywhere that you can go and buy that. So it just depends on the level that you're doing it at. My situation is not going to be everyone's situation, and I do understand that. I am very grateful for the situation that I am in. I know many young talented people who, you know, are not able to do what I'm doing because of finances and things like that, and I am very grateful for that I am in a financially stable situation and partnership, and that has helped me a lot. You know, you never know when something's going to work for you or if it's going to be the next big thing. You kind of are just taking a gamble. I feel like I take a gamble every day when I decide I want to do this and I want to do that. I just like hope people are going to like it. I hope I've covered everything that at least maybe gets the wheels turning in your head, and that you start thinking of the bigger picture and thinking of possibilities, and can I do this, how am I going to do this, you know, Brett mentioned XYZ, is that possible for me? And if I have not, if there's something you'd like to know that I have not mentioned, leave me a comment down below and let's talk further. Let's get other people involved, and you know, other people might be able to answer your question. I did an interview that I'm going to link down below where I went through like so many processes in the production line, from like idea to end customer kind of thing. I'm going to link that down below, so be sure to check that out. Until next time guys, bye.